this nostalgia for this time. There's a little bit of, at least the kids
It's
today.
been a while since we walked around thinking that the bombs were about to go off.
Yeah. I remember hiding under my desk thinking that would help.
Yep.
Being
Sure.
BS'd by my teacher. And, okay, you kids, hide under the desk, put your hands over your head, close your eyes. I'll be in the basement. Basically, it was a trick to get all the kids at some point, I suppose, to not notice that the teachers had all gone downstairs where it was actually safe, in the bunker with the food.
Or you couldn't see the look of sheer terror on their faces.
That's right. It was
their heads under the desk.
Oh man! And so in reality, I have my own, doubts about this escalating past any point, and parts of me, as cynical as I become after years of dealing with, as many of us have emotionally, the idea of, mutual assured destruction during the Cold War. You kind of have this yeah, really? And granted, Kim Jong-un feels a bit like a Bond villain, like we should just send him a white cat and hope that calms him down. He needs like a neurosis pet. But there is that outlier that he may be stupid enough to act, on a whim. But in reality, my house.
Wait, where are you?
Currently, I'm in St. Louis, so I'm fairly safe, I think. Where are you?
What is that? What's that thing behind you?
I'm in a. Oh, I see. You're watching on the stream. I'm at Shock City Studios in St. Louis. They've been lovely enough to let me use the space. So, and it's an awesome place. Shock City. We did a. That's right. Wait. And they're all going. I do that. That's how I do it. But I did a podcast here. I think called We Are Live yesterday, and to promote the gigs that I'm doing here at Helium, and the place was so awesome. I just wanted to get back in it and do the show from there today, and so they were lovely enough to have me. That being said,
somebody says on the chat room that it's the official IKEA studio.
That's right. Yeah, well, because these are
right.
That's a sound baffle. Okay, this actually has value. Okay, this breaks up treble waves. Baffle. It's a baffle. It's IKEA. It's baffled, and when you buy it, it goes B-A with an umlaut over it. F-E-L. Have you tried the new baffle chairs? They're very great, but your hair will catch. All right, so back to real news. So near doom. That's where we were. Oh yeah. Yeah. Mutual assured destruction. The possibility of death and nuclear war. So. In reality, and hi chat, I'm glad we're up. In reality, it seemed like the biggest case of wag the dog that I personally have ever seen. Like much was made of the Clinton, Bosnia and Albanian conflict. The fact that we did go there, but we didn't go into Rwanda, that it was really about covering the Lewinsky scandal. This was the prevailing story for a very long time, that we only went in there not because we were really humane and cared about what was happening, but because this would help pull attention away from the scandal of the president. And you can have a legit conversation both directions about whether that's true or not. My personal feeling is that particular scandal was not big enough to drive Clinton to do that. I think had Whitewater actually turned into something where they'd found out that that land deal was actually funky, and it led to both tax fraud and sales fraud along those lines. That in and of itself might be enough to drive somebody to cover if they're going to do some jail time, to get, very possibly, enter into a war zone that we already had, a stake in, but that ultimately would, amount to good cover. Morally, it wowould make us seem like the boss. It would have some strength to it. That I get. But to cover the Lewinsky affair, that was a stretch for me to buy that, as he needed that much cover for that. Because of his mentality, not because of what other people thought about it, quite frankly, because I think there are certainly politicians who would cover an affair that, with that heavy-handed a response, right? Especially if you ran on a family values kind of a ticket, as it were, and then you found yourself in a Dennis Hastert kind of a situation. If you were the president, you would do something along those lines. But, whatever. So that's a debatable point of it. But I just remember we went back and forth about whether that was a big part of it during the 90s, especially to the point where there was a movie called Wag the Dog. It became a running theme. And then we find ourselves fast forwarded now. We find out that Tillerson and not only the White House and the administration and the State Department, but the Canadians as well, in conjunction with their with Russian and Chinese ambassadors, have created a back channel to the North Koreans. It's been going on for 3 months. That while all this saber rattling is happening, there is and has been constant talk about what it would take to stop them from trying to put one of these things on an intercontinental ballistic missile that would reach another country. And basically, China and Russia do have some concerns in this area because North Korea, in the case of a nuclear dust-up, gets destroyed. It just gets eliminated. The generals who've been in the government since the 60s who, act like a character in Spies Like Us can't wait to push that button. And they've been excited about it for a very long time, using that stuff. And it's not so much that North Korea's destruction is concerning to China. It's that everybody who knows anything about nuclear destruction is that the cloud of radiation that causes cancer for the next 25 years drifts in their direction. And, not to mention the ancillary number of innocent people who are dead, right? Because of this. But the big one is that Vladivostok is in radiation drift range from Russia, China, all of northern China. This is a big problem. If America decides that it's had enough and fires a multitude of missiles just to eliminate the threat from North Korea permanently and uses it as an example to everybody else in the world, that's a major concern for them. So they've been working on this back channel for quite some time, meaning that they're ratcheting up the dialogue between these two leaders where they're just kind of flailing about. While there's absolutely a chance it could get out of hand, largely it feels for show. That they both kind of know this, that they both can make these kind of exaggerated statements, and then it looks like two bluff guys.
You're in and out.
Oh, I am? Am I choppy? I beg your pardon?
Yeah.
It might be just the volume of my voice. But that being said, we're going to we got to take a break anyway, so we'll check all that stuff in a moment. But the big part of this is, while this is all going on, what is the home news that's getting buried because of it? And when we come back, I want to talk about the Manafort raid, because
And there's white supremacists and counter-protesters.
yeah, they're hilarious. Did you see their everybody has to lose? Did you see everybody has to lose weight if they're going to show up for the thing? You have to be a physically exemplary example of the Aryan race if you're going to show up. You can't just show up all chubby and with Cheeto fingers and be a part of the movement. You give us a bad name,
Wow, no tubby ones, huh?
Yeah, that's right. They're like a no muffin top rule that the white supremacists just put out for the marches because it was embarrassing them.
Another reason I can't be a member.
We're always getting excluded for something. I'm sure my height and my brown hair will, there's always something, on the downside. But let's take a break. When we come back, I do want to talk about I feel like these, the white supremacist guys' attention is what they crave, so I'm less interested in giving them any. And I feel like this is a phase in history that we're going through in the removal of these statues, which I think is a healthy thing. And it will come and go as these kind of things do. But the Manafort thing has some legs, and this will affect who is our president in the next year. And I'll tell you why when we come back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, now with 100% more Johnny Million. I'll figure right on. I'll figure out video strength on this for you guys here. Let's see. Use a keyframe frequency of 4 seconds or less. The keyframes are not big. Oh, there's some sort of weird. All right, we'll check our settings on here. Video. Let's see. Base canvas resolution, output scaled resolution. We'll try this. Video output. Okay, I'm going offline for 1 second, guys. I'll be right back on that. See if we can go back. hopefully that brings us back up. And yeah, it looks like the stream health is a little bit better. It went green almost immediately. Look at that. Beautiful. I think that might help it, guys. I think it was just a slightly different frame rate was messing with everybody. And hello. So, and we'll add on this guy. Wait. Oh, I see. That's why. Background behind this guy. There you go. Stomach growl. That's fun. That was me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So,
30 seconds, and this sounds much better.
oh, excellent. I think it was because it was just me overwhelming their internet here. Might have been entirely it. But we shall see. Okay. Try using this.
This is Tom Hartman, and you're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT.
Welcome back to the show. So we should be up and running, and hopefully audio will be smoother as we go forward. But I have you been did you follow the pre-dawn raid of Paul Manafort, Johnny?
Yeah, I've heard a lot about it. I've heard some people say it's excessive.
Right. Mostly people who would be affected by it on a criminal level. They seem incredibly concerned.
Yeah, and most other people say if there was a pre-dawn raid, the reason was because if they knew it was coming, then they would flush Paul Manafort down the toilet.
Yeah, nobody goes to jail, Karen. It'd be a straight up Goodfellas moment where he's trying to shove 10 years of tax documents down the toilet.
Watching for black helicopters.
Right.
Oh, man, that third act of Goodfellas.
Oh, it's brutal.
This whole thing is the third act of Goodfellas.
That's right. And Manafort's life is the third act of Goodfellas currently. Because if you, I don't know if you know this, and I don't know if you're following on this, but back in March, Manafort's daughter had her phone hacked. Did you know this?
Oh.
Yeah. So her phone got hacked.
No, but that's horrible.
And somebody grabbed something like 40,000 text messages and put them on the dark web so that they could be downloaded. And they are incredibly telling. Okay, so this is there was a new article in Business, I guess in Bloomberg about this most recently, but back in March 21st, there was an article in Business Insider that kind of came and went, and I think it was because it was right about the time that Manafort was, I guess, had to register as a foreign agent, basically as a way of lessening the criminal charges against him. It was effectively creating a situation where it's when the cops go, look, okay, you cop to this, you fix this, and we'll only put you in jail for this. How about that? Like that's a fairly common thing, especially with white-collar crime, especially with legislative-oriented crime, right? They'll go, all right, we're not going to go after you for the insurance fraud if you refile and pay the fine because we don't need to add another 6 months of trial work to bust you on this. But we will if you make us, and if you do, we'll go after you doubly hard on these three other things. Because usually when you have as many ties as Manafort has, they only need to get you for 6 crimes. The 15 other ones, they can just dangle as extra time because you can only do so many life sentences, as they often say with serial killers and the like. After victim 6, it's free. Is really the horrifying part of our legal system. Is you can't give somebody more than 3 life. You can't bring them back to life and kill them again. And in this so in this particular story, this goes back to on February 20th, 2014, Ukrainian riot police opened fire on thousands of peaceful protesters who were complaining about Yanukovych is, Viktor Yanukovych, who was the president of Ukraine, who was totally under the Kremlin's umbrella. They were helping him launder money. He was getting rich off the country and just siphoning cash out of Ukraine. And basically the citizens had enough, so they did protests, and he sent soldiers down there, and they opened fire. They killed somewhere in the order of 100 people, just firing into the crowd. And according to these text messages from Manafort's daughter, it was her dad's idea. This is literally, she is implying, when she's talking to her sister, it's this girl, Andrea Manafort, talking to her sister Jessica in March of 2015, saying that her father, quote, had no moral or legal compass. She said, "Don't fool yourself." Andrea wrote to her sister, according to the text, that money we have is blood money. You know he has killed people in Ukraine, knowingly, as a tactic to outrage the world and get focus on Ukraine. Remember when there were all those deaths taking place a while back, about a year ago, revolts and whatnot? Do you know whose strategy that was to cause that? To send those people out and get them slaughtered? Andrew did not respond to a request for comment. Paul was a top advisor to Yanukovych from 2014 to 2014. Ukrainian authorities have said Yanukovych created the conditions that led to the security forces opening fire. Ukraine's interior minister issued a warrant for Yanukovych's arrest shortly after the uprising. He fled to Russia, where he was granted asylum. He's there to this day. So this is his daughter talking to his other daughter about why the two of them don't want to be anywhere near him anymore. Later on, she said that they were having financial problems because Ukraine was late in paying their dad. He's cash poor right now, the text said, and now Ukraine is late in paying him. And the reason he didn't go through a public divorce with his then wife, who had had enough apparently too, was because he had too many skeletons and his work and payment in Ukraine is legally questionable. She later said, and this is my kind of favorite one of all of them. That's why there's going to be I think there's a new hashtag coming out of this one. She said, "He is a sick effing tyrant, and we keep showing up and dancing for him.
Wow.
We just keep showing up and eating the lobster. Nothing changes." Eating the lobster. That's how this girl describes going to these ritzy dinners and these big events for these oligarchs, essentially, she's having a genuine moment of crisis about the fact that her dad is taking blood money, that he is instructing, and she got married. She's in the middle of a divorce right now. I believe she's the sister that's divorced. They keep talking about which one, but I'm fairly certain because Andrea got married shortly thereafter. She's in the middle of a divorce, and curiously enough, her soon-to-be ex-husband is one of the players that has come up he's the son-in-law of Manafort, who apparently has been questioned and gotten his documents taken by Mueller's probe. And the argument is now that she won't that perhaps her marriage is falling apart because this guy got into business with her dad, and she doesn't want to have anything either to do with either of them. I mean, that's the emotional shenanigans of this. It's kind of immaterial, but that seems to be the sort of pace of things. If it's the other daughter and I'm confusing them, forgive me, because it's not clear. But insofar as the marriage and all that kind of stuff, it seems to be timed out as such. But at the very least, one of his daughters, soon-to-be ex-husbands, who she's in the process of divorcing, has flipped apparently on Manafort 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before this raid happened. So I think the raid happened July 27th. 2 weeks before that, they had gathered intel and other documentation from her soon-to-be ex-husband. And if this is the same daughter who's like, I'm sick of eating the lobster, it speaks to a level of the depth and complexity. And quite frankly, the
we need more of those people.
The what? Sorry.
The people who are close.
Mm-hmm.
We need more of those people who are like in the circle but not totally invested, who can have
a moment of
legitimate
conscience,
crisis of morality, where the others are just immune to it. Yeah.
Right. The ones that everybody calls deep state
They
all
have
the
to
time.
exist.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah, this is particularly fascinating considering that the president, this week was finally asked. He's going to do a big press conference on Monday. There's supposedly going to be questions about Russia. It's going to be it's going to be just a hurricane of questions coming at him. I don't know how they're going to organize it, because once he starts down the road of his kind of jibber jabber about this, it's nothing, I don't know, maybe something. There could have been that, not realizing that he is legally on the hook for everything he agrees to, even tacitly, and that his legal obligations in all these organizations, his little LLCs he sets up for every building, the fact that Manafort's been living in Trump Tower, one floor below him for 20 years, and that 5 floors below him was a Russian mobster who was running a human trafficking and gambling ring out of the building. The Alpha Bank pinging server in the basement of Trump Tower. Like, there's no point where you can easily come out without legal representation and answer these questions. I think that's the problem, and quite frankly, the salvation of this circumstance. Because the fact that he's unaware of that, the fact that he blunders into this, that without somebody legally tapping him on the shoulder every time he's about to speak, he absolutely has incriminated himself multiple times already. It's just a matter of will on the part of the Senate and the Mueller probe and how far that's going to go to actually act on it. But it's not like there isn't a there now. And Monday's just going to set that even further loose. Right. Well, Manafort, we have to take a break. But Manafort's, the raid on it is quite telling. The details that came out about that raise a lot of questions, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to take calls. 773-763-9278 is the number. This is the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT820.com. Audio is the video buffering too much for you guys on the, well, now it's buffering for me, so I can't even tell if you're hearing me talk. Here, look at these settings and see what the kilobytes are at 2,000. All right, so what's the stream output? All right, so okay, so fingers crossed that actually helps. There we go. What's happening? Okay, I'm back. Nope, it's buffering again. It's something
hey,
that.
Hal.
Hi, yeah.
You were like kind of
coming in and out a little bit.
Kind of in and out a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you?
I'll look into
connect
what.
And reconnect.
You know what? I will. I'll drop off and I'll be right back. Here you go. Always. Johnny, if I get choppy at all, don't be afraid to jump in. Watch it, Double G, in and out a little bit. It's true. Warning that a fight is breaking out between counter-protesters and white supremacists. Yeah, I saw that this morning. That happened earlier this morning. And it's not surprising. Like I in terms of that's what these guys are looking for. These guys are looking for violence to break out. We can't even speak our minds. We're the victims here. Like, that's what they're shooting for. So, I take sort of the Nazis march on Skokie attitude about this. The people of Skokie had the best system for it. They shut all their shutters and nobody went outside. And these people walked down an empty street. Yeah, I don't doubt that it will be going on and on. But I think that's the best way you deal with these people is you turn your back on them. You don't photograph it. You make it so that they can put up their little videos of themselves that they film themselves on their own phones. But it's not going to go any further.
30 seconds, 35 seconds.
Excellent, thank you.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
So the president had a comment on the Manafort raid this week. Here you go.
I thought it was a very, very strong signal or whatever.
Whatever.
I know Mr. Manafort. I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but I know him. He was with the campaign, as you know, for a very short period of time, relatively short period of time, but I've always known him a very good man. I thought it was a very,
rough stuff.
They do that very seldom, so I was surprised to see it. I was very, very surprised to see it. We haven't really been involved. Excuse me?
Have you spoken to the FBI director about it? Or the...
No, I have not. I have not, but to do that early in the morning, whether or not it was appropriate, you'd have to ask them. I've always found Paul Manafort to be a very decent man. And he's like a lot of other people, probably makes consultant fees from all over the place. Who
as
knows?
you do.
I don't know.
Oligarchs, murderers.
I thought that was a very...
I do that.
That was pretty tough stuff.
It's pretty
tough
Perhaps
stuff.
his family was there.
Oh, poor guy. It woke him up. They knocked on his bedroom door, woke him up. Maybe his family was there. We don't know. Yeah, I don't think they were. if you look at any of the stories about relationship stuff in that circumstance right now, I don't think anybody was staying over that night. So Manafort, so the president's idea is he probably gets funds from, he consults with a lot of people. That may be true.
Yeah, like a lot of people.
But he definitely...
What kills me is that, this is somebody who he was very close with, even though he doesn't want to admit it.
Right.
He hasn't even talked to the
He
FBI
lived in his
director
building.
about it. No, it didn't
He
even
sold
come up.
him a multi-million-dollar condo in his building. He lived one floor below him. Honestly, that's like my problem with this idea that the pinged server, the Alpha Bank pinged server in Trump Tower that allegedly they bounce money through as a way of laundering it out of Russia. That's one of the things that Mueller's looking into, and it's and people can say there's no direct evidence of that. There's enough around it, and there's certainly enough in the legal wranglings of the Trump organization that make it obviously a genuine suspect circumstance. But does anyone believe for a second that someone like Vladimir Putin would let his money run through a building he doesn't have tapped or have affiliates in to watch it for him? That's just dumb. I wouldn't. Would you? I mean, at a certain point, how many Law and Order shows do you have to watch where you go, it helps me to think like a killer? At a certain point, as an investigator, that's your job. Like, okay, if I was awful, what would I do? Well, this would be the easiest awful thing to do. And then what else would you do? Well, if that didn't work, I'd spray poison in the guy's face and watch his hair fall out and see him die in a hospital 6 weeks later. And the lawyer, Sergei Magnitsky, who died, who was beaten to death in jail, that the Magnitsky Act is named after, who's responsible for the reason why Putin has to launder his money through places like the basement of Trump Tower. That guy had a price on his head for years, and this ongoing situation just it keeps getting more obvious as they go along. And so but remember what Andrea Manafort said about her own dad, that she's like, this is this is blood money. Here we have this, people are being shot in the street. And that was our dad's idea. He said, you know what would really get a lot of attention is if you shot a bunch of protesters. Get them to come down here. You know what? We know they're coming, so line up and wait. And then kill a bunch of them. And they'll recognize, we'll say that those are pro-Russia people who are trying to attack us, and that'll turn it in our way, I mean, and he's in the room when that discussion. Let's give Manafort the benefit of the doubt that he wasn't actually the guy who came up with the idea. He's in the room, and he continued to work for that guy after until there was an arrest warrant put out for him, and he fled to Russia. Manafort still worked for him.
Yeah, but have you seen my house?
That's right. Awesome. Which one? What does it take to have, to ride out the 2008 mortgage crisis? I think Ukrainian blood money, that'll protect you. But the point is, this guy is part of those kind of discussions. He's there when those decisions are being made. He's working for those kind of people. And what's Trump's response when the guy has they knock on his bedroom door and say, we have a warrant to look at your stuff? That's tough. It's tough stuff.
Yeah, it's
very
tough.
tough.
I'm not really,
tough stuff.
Really involved
like
with
maybe
him.
his family was there.
Man.
Maybe they heard the knocking. I'm the one who knocks.
I'm just trying to let my base feel sorry for him.
That's right. Yeah. So henceforth, from that, whatever Trump's idea about this is, and there's obviously some talk about, but either it's Kelly or any of these folks, having we got to have a conversation. We got to start speaking openly about this because the opaqueness of this is worse than the information you're giving me. So the problem that Kelly has is he's going to advise, as will whoever the new White House comms director or the acting one is going to advise Trump to be more overt in his talking about this so that he can just shrug it off because his base will accept the shrugging. They don't understand that he goes and just rattles on about this and gets himself in more trouble. So Slate comes out with an article, I think yesterday, called Paul Manafort is in Trouble. That's just the title of the article. The one-time Trump campaign manager and longtime political consultant for the dictatorial set is clearly locked in the sights of special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. How bad is it for Manafort? When news of a pre-dawn FBI raid at Manafort's Virginia home broke this week, President Trump took a moment from his daily media shtick of self-pity laced with self-aggrandizement to comment on the raid and the fortunes of his former advisor. I thought it was very, very strong signal or whatever. It was really tough stuff. And by the way, and we recall that the day of the actual raid, because we're finding out about this after the fact, the day of the actual raid is the day that Trump questioned why the motivations and the job security of the acting FBI director. So if there was a hint of pity in Trump's voice that perhaps, because beyond the jarring raid, investigators are circling, on Thursday, Bloomberg outlined the many different agencies that are digging through Manafort's past and many different ways he appears to be toast. Here's a sampling. Mueller's team for weeks has been issuing subpoenas to global banks seeking transaction histories for accounts involving Manafort and his business interests. Investors are trying to use Manafort's business associates, including his son-in-law and a Ukrainian oligarch, in order to turn up the heat on the former Trump aide in an effort to extract more information out of him. Jeffrey Yohai, who is the estranged husband of Manafort's daughter, is under investigation by FBI agents working with prosecutors in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Los Angeles. People familiar with their work told Bloomberg U.S. authorities are now looking into claims by an investor that Yohai operated a Ponzi scheme. Federal prosecutors in New York have handed over. That's the one thing, man. You got to do. You can do Madoff or you can do blood money. You can't do both. Did we learn nothing from, from the smartest guys in the room? The energy trade going on, in California. You can trick states out of their pension funds, or you can shut off power to hospitals and kill old people. But if you do both, people get their ears perk up. Okay, so federal prosecutors in New York have handed over the reins to Mueller's team on an investigation started earlier this year into money laundering allegations, where Manafort invested in New York real estate to clean up dirty money in Eastern Europe. This is a constant refrain, and this goes back to when Trump was like one of the people who worked at Trump's campaign was interviewed by the New York Times a while back because they just moved on the condition of anonymity because they want to keep working in the real estate market. But they basically said his family would come in and sit in front of him and tell him about a really great deal, and he would say, "Okay, do it." And they would go and form an LLC, and he had no knowledge of where the money was coming or going. They would give him like a half-assed explanation of what was going on. So this dude, not only is he deep in it in stuff he knows about, Trump is deep in stuff he has no idea about. And never mind the fact that if Obama's son-in-law owned 666 anything, like Alex Jones his head would have blown up like the guy in Scanners. Like, honestly, Jared Kushner bought 666 Fifth Avenue. Like, could there be a more exemplary address for satanic influence in the United States?
Skipped, like, there's no 13th floor in
why is Pat
high-rises,
Robertson not doing a
666
serious
address?
He comes in here and buys 666 Fifth Avenue and sells it to the
God, that's what he
Muslim
sounds like now?
Brotherhood. Then he's got Chinese people coming in here. That's always a concern. You know, like, for God's sake, if anyone, if Whitewater had landed on the fact that the Clintons were trying to buy 666, and the reality is, you know, even if you don't care about the bizarrely end times kind of Omen-esque elements of Jared Kushner's, you know, honestly looking more like a grown-up Damien Omen than Sam Neill did in the third movie, if you really give him a look over. I have been working for my father-in-law, Satan, for, you know, whatever. Anyway, so he's, you know, Kushner himself. Okay, let's put aside the fact that under normal circumstances, if it was a Democrat, the right would be freaking out that the son-in-law owns 666 anything, much less 666 Fifth Avenue. Let's stack on top of that he's losing money on the deal. That just on a practical notion, it's a terrible deal. He's trying to sell it for $1.6 billion. It's not worth it. It's underwater. He bought it for more than anybody had ever bought anything. It's like the highest price paid for a building in New York history, bought straight out, and he's stuck with it, and it's half empty. And I don't understand why it isn't, because I don't know who wouldn't want the address 666 Fifth Avenue in business, quite frankly. But I mean, honestly, there's several like the Psychic Eye booksellers. Wouldn't they want their corporate headquarters there? I'm just saying, they've got a couple of, you know, outlets. But the point being is that even if you don't care about the ancillary Pat Robertson-esque storyline about this, he's bad at his job. That this idea that they're businessmen, they'll know how to run things, and they'll know how to do great deals for America, that whole storyline, that whole myth, falls apart on the 666 Fifth Avenue story and the New Jersey slumlord, office building that he opened up that nobody wants to go to, that they were like trying to get yuppies to move into, and it still remains half empty, and everybody's got complaints about. Like, there's a certain point where even if you don't care that it's blood money, the man lost a casino. You understand? It's a certain point. Okay, so investigators, they're the last two, and we got to take a break. Investigators have been focusing on Manafort business called CMZ Ventures that received $25 million from Ukrainian oligarch Dmitry Firtash to develop a luxury skyscraper on Park Avenue. The project never happened. The money was never invested, and a year later, in 2009, CMZ shut down. Plaintiff in a civil suit on the matter, including the former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Yulia Tymoshenko, alleged the real purpose of the firm was to launder money through the U.S. financial system that Firtash had obtained improperly by skimming sales of a natural gas pipeline to Ukraine, according to Bloomberg. The New York authorities are examining an unusual combination of mortgages and loans assembled by Manafort. Remember, he got that big, $25 million loan the day he left the RNC. Next day, how many people can lose a job and the next day get the best real estate mortgage deal of their lives?
Yeah.
I would almost have understood it on some level. You could have gotten away with it, really, if he'd gotten the mortgage the minute he took the job as the Trump campaign manager. You know what I mean? Like, even if you said it looks hinky, maybe there's some point to it, though. Maybe like he's working with Trump now. Obviously, he's going to, He's picked because he's a winner. Trump likes winners. He's going to be big in the real estate market after this. Whatever real estate he's going to be investing that money in is going to be a winner. I get where you would think that as an investor or a bank getting the job. But the minute you're fired from the Trump campaign, this just looks like hush money. This is laundered shut up money. And, it's fascinating stuff. But this all went down this week while everybody's thinking that Kim Jong-un, is going to fire on Guam, which is, I guess, our Thatcher moment, our Falkland Islands moment in history. But it is absolutely a serious consideration. However, it reeks, and I'm curious what the callers have to say. 773-763-9278. We'll be back right after this. Mm-hmm.
Of University of Missouri, basically.
Right.
And 7 hillbillies in tank tops.
Right.
Came marching through. And at the time, even, I was just like, can't we just kind of turn our head? Like, I get it, go out and show them full sport, but the public money that was spent, helicopter fuel.
Oh, yeah.
Like, all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Like, these are 7 fucking rednecks.
That's right.
Telling you this, and then, of course, somebody grabs them. They know the police have to protect them if they get into a fight.
Absolutely.
It was insane.
Well, that's exactly what's happening. You take advantage of a pre-existing system, and the reality is they're benefiting from taking advantage of that system, and they know it. So, and you also have a flood of what would be internet white supremacists finally finding friends that way, whereas the networks themselves were decimated in a normal situation. Now there's Reddit threads and all kinds of stuff for you to get together and find like-minded people, or so it's definitely a point of concern. But I don't think the group has grown the way they think. It's just existed this way for a very long time, and this is just packs of loners. And the reality is, if you just leave them to it, now granted, there's certain groups of them, the McVeighs of the world, have to be watched, and there's always going to be one in that crowd that's a point of concern. And anybody who's trying to be the Anwar al-Awlaki of that group, who's trying to propagandize and drive them in a direction, is concerning. But the rest of them will start infighting so horribly that they'll just collapse. And then you end up like, we're going to take the state house with nunchucks and homemade grenades, and Stumpy ends up informing on the rest of his group because he blew his hand off. Yeah. And by the way, chat room, I want to thank Billy and Amos and Carter and Maureen for that. I appreciate it. I'm trying to slide by this week since Wirecast won't let me use more than one license. It's so stupid.
30 seconds, and you sounded robotic just now.
I'm going to stop and start again. I'll call you right back. 1 second. It's like it starts to fade after 15 seconds, and we're back. Hey, do you hear me? Yeah. Tom, do we know that that's mathematically true, Tom? You multiply 666 by 13, you get Trump's weight in grams? These dudes talked me into making a bomb because we were going to take a state house so these mongrel racists wouldn't get SBA loans.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
FBI's coming through the window, and they're looking for the documents. That's amazing.
Are you allowed to repeat what you just said from the chat room? I don't care if it's not true.
the what do you mean the groups
The
of
numerology theory.
Oh yeah, Tom Herbert in our Tom Hebert in our chat room was joking and saying if you multiply 666 by 13, you get Trump's weight in grams, and we have no science to back that up at all.
I have new respect for Tom.
We never lose Tom respect for Tom. It's beautiful. But and I wanted to chat. In our chat room, we have some super chat donations from Billy and Amos and Carter and Maureen. I want to thank you and to everybody who gives every week because it really helps the show. Johnny and I do this for free and for love, so it always helps us with our technical issues, of which there are many, especially when I'm on the road. I'm in St. Louis this week. We're within something that rhymes with spitting distance from these white supremacists, that are marching down. And I do believe in the kind of Skokie, Illinois attitude of how to deal with these people is that you can show up but turn your backs, don't look at them. If they want to film themselves, knock themselves out. But you empower them by attention, so best not to give them any. And sort of obviously fighting as a counter demonstrator doesn't help either. Because, again, they're protected by the law. We do have free speech in this country. So what you do is you basically walk into the rake of giving them more, due protection than they deserve. So I do think it's important to find a way, find an alternate way. This is my in the case of of Iraq or something, or Muslims, this idea that they somehow go, they hate us for our freedoms. Then wouldn't the real smart response be, oh, well, you know what we should do to make them really mad? Give people more freedoms. Like, in response to 9/11, instead of fighting a war, we're going to give gay people the right to get married. We're going to give women equal pay. We're going to hand out more SBA loans to minorities. We're going to make sure that we're, as a religiously pluralistic society, we're even more open. So that if there are sects in the world that need to have peaceful conversations to try and end the strife in the Middle East, they can have it here on our soil. We're going to be open-armed to every belief system. There are no heretics or infidels in our belief system. And even if we disagree with someone, we're never going to act violently towards them. That's arguably the way you fight the idea, at least, that they hate us for our freedom.
With open arms.
That's right, yeah. Now I come to you. Right. We fight it with the music of Steve Perry. But
that's right.
Yeah, but and Donna just gave us a donation in the super chat. Thank you, Donna. So sweet. Let's do we have any callers? Because I will definitely get down a rabbit hole again. Excellent. Who do we have?
We have, we have Amos on line 1.
Oh, right on.
That Trump doesn't respect power.
Oh, there we go. Hey, Amos, welcome.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Hal. And hello there, Johnny.
Hey, how you doing, Amos?
Doing great. I know this is a little off topic, but I want to talk about Trump and climate change.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And as you know, last week, the New York Times leaked a government climate science report because the scientists were fearful that Trump, the administration, would hide the results. And the report is part of the National Climate Assessment mandated by Congress for every 4 years. So they have to give an assessment of the climate situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was prepared by 13 agencies, including NASA and NOAA. The report states that America has seen more heat waves and rainfall as a result of climate change. It also finds that the world has warmed by 1.6 degrees Fahrenheit over the last 150 years, and that human activity is the primary cause for that warming. And it concludes with high confidence that humans are responsible for effectively all observed warming since 1951. Now, This is in direct odds with Trump and his administration. As a matter of fact, EPA head Scott Pruitt said there was tremendous disagreement on the impact humans have had on the climate.
Yeah, between
course,
scientists who actually
between
scientists who actually work at a university or in a lab and people who work for ExxonMobil. Apparently, the scientists hired by ExxonMobil have a difference of opinion with what groups that represent citizenries feel. But absolutely, continue.
Yeah. And, as we know, Trump has withdrawn America from the Paris Accord. And now he's going to nominate this guy named Sam Clovis as the head of the USDA, who has said climate science is junk science and not proven. And so, this leads a little credence to those scientists' concerns that the Trump administration is going to step on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's been some recent examples of the effect of climate change. There's this new phenomenon called flash droughts, which have been rapidly forming droughts that have affected much of the Dakotas and parts of Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And according to the Associated Press, the dry conditions are laying waste to crops in Syrian pasture and hayland. Ranchers and farmers are having to sell their cattle and crops due to the extra dry conditions. And the U.S. Drought Monitor predicts that these types of droughts are expected to increase as the plant warms. Here in northern Illinois and in southern Wisconsin, there has been major flooding, and Governor Rauner was forced to declare a state of emergency. In New Orleans, a state of emergency has been declared because 14 of the 20 drainage pumps have failed due to power outages.
That's right. We're up against the break, Amos. I appreciate the call. Yeah. And there's no question that there is a studied interest in corporations to not have to pay fines or clean up the messes they make. This is not about climate change. This is about industrial pollution and the ancillary costs. This is about making 18% profit into 20% profit by not having to pay fines for mercury or manure cleanup. And that's an ongoing fight that we should get used to. I appreciate the call. We'll be back right after this. More of your calls, 773-763-9278. That guy was prepped. Yeah, he was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, at least he did it with, a couple of minutes left, so I could let him go for a bit and actually get his point out, Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate it. For show financial reasons, I was like, the only other software, I can either buy a second license for Wirecast, which is, I guess, a possibility, or use Mimo Live, which is a subscription service, like $60 a month or something to do this. And I think that might be our best on the road thing as I go do stand-up shows. So thank you for your contribution. That will handle that. Right now I'm using OBS, and it's not bad, but it's not great. It's definitely more rudimentary than what I have at the house now. And I guess it works better in a static environment, but for now, hopefully it's is audio and video okay for the most part in the chat room, guys? Just let me know. Yeah. Oh, and Amos, was that Amos from the chat room? I thought it was, but I didn't want to out you as part of the conversation in here. Absolutely stellar work, by the way. Clear, concise, direct. I'm sorry we ran out of time. We literally were up against the hour. I tried to give you as much space to go for it as possible, so thank you.
He's from Skokie, Illinois, that I'm actually really good friends with. And it's funny because I was listening to him on a podcast earlier. Jonathan Kite.
Oh.
Do you know Jonathan?
Yeah.
Okay, stand up, and he was on Two Broke Girls or whatever.
Yeah, right.
I literally went there last year. He filmed his high school special, his comedy special, probably going on Netflix this fall.
Yeah.
At Skokie North, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The fucking theater is like have you been to the pageant here?
Oh, yeah.
Or yeah, that theater is like as nice as the pageant.
Oh, yeah. And that's nothing compared to New Trier. I went to New Trier.
Oh, that's where you went?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
I've thought about
same thing. We did, like, and I came from Kentucky, man. We didn't even have, we had an auditorium for theater that we could, at some point, could have used for theater stuff, and never got a chance to do a production of anything. The band would apparently, the high school jazz band could do a show there like once every 3 years, but it was empty the rest of the time except for announcements and stuff like that. And then I moved to Chicago, and I go to this high school. Literally, there's 140 kids and 114 kids in my graduating class in Kentucky. There were 1,400 graduating from New Trier, from my class. Yeah. There's like 4,000 students, per year on that campus alone. And I was in Pirate.
The right word.
Yeah, I was in Pirates of Penzance, and I was in Brighton Beach Memoirs, and we had two-story sets for those productions. They had a 2-story pirate ship that moved out onto the stage, and then for Brighton Beach Memoirs, we had literally a 2-story set. So all the upstairs scenes that oftentimes in New York when they do it are downstage scenes that they put up temporarily. You just go up a flight of stairs and do the scene up there. It was amazing. You had a better view from the balcony of the second floor. It was amazing. All right, Rocky. Lane Tech in high school. Yeah. Lane Tech in Chicago has 4,500 students, too, in their chat room. Yeah. It's amazing. And, I was definitely not a valedictorian. I was second to the lowest in my class, my graduating class grade point average. Oh, yeah, because I ditched all the time. I was like,
try hard to actually.
I did. I worked at it. I passed all my tests, so they couldn't flunk me out completely. But I didn't do homework, and I was always doing something else. And then, like, my best grades came my last year. My senior year, I had the best grades in my entire education from first grade. Like, had the best grades because I was shooting my game show that I got when I was, 17, and I had done a after-school special that same year in the beginning of the year. So I missed the first 2 weeks of school, and the last quarter, I was flying to L.A., shooting for 2 days, and flying back, doing this thing, and, like, only coming to class 3 days a week. So to do it, my dad kind of laid down the law, and so I did my homework on the plane. I was, like, on it. And so I wasn't bored. I was always, I was engaged. I was like, okay, I'm not exchanging high school for what I want to do. It was parallel tracks. It felt okay. And so I busted my hump,
If I heard of a 17-year-old doing that now, I'd be like, that's a lie. That's a fucking.
Yeah, it's true, though. I'll cut to your second camera so you can see you're talking. Oh, yeah. Let's see. Transition. Here you go. We'll move you over there. Say hi.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah, you're not. He's not on mic, but you can get the ancillary conversation a little bit. So we'll let you continue your work. Are you working on graphics packages for your stuff?
Doing stuff for the morning radio show.
Right.
Yeah.
Always
Small
like
business ownership. This is what you get, guys.
That's right. Yeah, you
30
just
seconds.
chip away and start like this little banner that goes across the bottom that has all my social media icons and all that kind of stuff. Like it took me 10 passes to get enough. Like, okay, how much can I get all 5 on one thing?
Yeah.
And then the social media icons and try to make it look nice and all that kind of stuff. And you're back and like,
We have a designer.
yeah,
I can't pay him to do all this little stuff.
yeah, right.
He's great. He's fantastic.
You can't afford it. No. Yeah. So I, and this one I didn't even like. Sometimes you'll borrow a design. Like, okay, I just use it. This one I made from scratch.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Pus-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Let's continue taking some calls about this because I'm curious as to whether people are sort of caught up in the turmoil of the if it bleeds it leads fear-based news, or if people are kind of staying on message and being able to see this. What do you think, Johnny? What's your call?
I think most people are kind of. I think the long game is hard for a lot of people to focus in the news cycle, and they just hear Russia and they're starting to tune out now. But I think that the important people who are involved in the investigations, of course, are not tuning out.
Right.
And it's when it bubbles back up for real, it's going to blow people's mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think because I actually think it's news-wise, it's sexier than it looks at first. Because a lot of it, like, okay, some of his deals and it's money laundering sounds nasty in kind of a B plot from a Miami Vice episode, right? But
Right.
in terms of what that money was for, when it was making the rounds naturally, what was done to get that money is the scary part, is the stuff that really matters ultimately, and in terms of human trafficking, blood money, as Manafort's daughter refers to it, that's a huge concern. In there, I'll be all right back. There you go. So let's take a call. I'm sure we have.
Want to see what Steve from the Gold Coast, maybe?
That's
on line
right.
2?
Love it, Steve from the Gold Coast. Welcome.
Thank you. Great, thank you. Consider, like, some of your colleagues push something like Bitcoin, I mean, hey, everybody else is doing it.
Right, yeah.
But
Gold is very important, as the... Ladies and gentlemen, if you can't buy our iodine, at least buy gold. Right, Super DNA Max penis pill.
Exactly,
it's what keeps us on the air against YouTube's...
Right.
Right. We have the documents that are...
Exactly, because after the apocalypse, your gold certificate is what's going to save your life.
That's exactly
don't
right.
actually have the gold to trade you for water, but I've got a certificate for you.
That's right.
So, but on a serious note, I mean, I'm looking forward to the press conference as well. But keep in mind that this White House has decided to address its problems with the press in a number of ways, including firing the communications director, replacing the press secretary. But a more devious sort of plot behind all this has to do with who actually gets called upon and who gets credentialed to be a part of the Washington of the White House press pool. Because for people who don't know it, it's a very small room, and you can't just let everyone who wants to be there be there. So you have to make choices. And what this administration has done is sort of decided that very prominent and well-respected publications and broadcasters aren't going to necessarily get credentialed, or if they're credentialed, it's not they who are going to get called upon. It's Joe the plumber with a blog with some 20,000 followers that's going to get called upon, because these are the kind of people who are getting White House press credentials.
Well,
Why? Because
and also
they're
don't forget
pro-Trump.
the little screens they had for a while where they were letting right-wing radio hosts get on camera time, even though they're in Montana or whatever, by putting the screen on there as if that was necessary. Because understand for a second, an on-camera press briefing, there is nothing to say that the White House press secretary can't take questions via audio from somebody, but the fact that they want to put them on camera is a promotional activity. Like, let's not pretend that wasn't there to gin up, support for basically like it's a payback for, hey, thanks for having me on the air a bunch of times, which is why we had the fairness doctrine for a long time before Reagan got rid of it. This is where it was headed when the fairness doctrine was actually put into place. So, anyways, continue.
Right, and the other point I wanted to make was on the whole North Korea question. I mean, North Korea, again, for someone like Donald Trump, who obviously doesn't understand public policy, couldn't find North or South Korea on a map if his life depended on it. Other people understand that this sort of bolsters from North Korea, something that's been going on for 40 years. They love to stand up there and shake a stick at the world and claim that that the apocalypse is coming and we're going to bring it upon it. What the rest of the world realizes is this is a tactic for them to get something else, and that the development of a nuclear capacity for them is not about bombing anybody. It's about joining the nuclear club, which essentially makes you insulated from an attack from an outside
Yeah,
force.
if anything, this is blowback.
It means that you create a bubble.
Right. If anything, this is blowback from Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi. That basically what these guys did wasn't to have weapons of mass destruction that drew the ire of the United States and others that led to them being hung, surreptitiously killed in the streets, effectively. The reality was, it was the fact that they didn't have those weapons that left them open to this attack, that what they were saying to their neighbors to protect themselves from the encroachment of Iran or other forces in the region, or the Kurds in the north from trying to take him, was the idea that, well, yeah, I'll gas you guys if you come for me. Because conventional weaponry is expensive. Maintaining enough bombs to drive back the Kurds or to keep the Iranians from taking over your country is expensive. Gas is not, and it's very frightening. And whether you have it or not, it makes sense from a tactical standpoint in those regions to say, I have it and I'll use it if you bug me. And that became the historical way of doing it in the Middle East. Gaddafi did that. Saddam Hussein did that. Other leaders in the area have had that. Obviously, Assad has used forms of chemical weapons. They're available to them, but the idea of having them was the way of keeping other countries at bay. Not that you would use them, but that your own version of mutual assured destruction. Now, nuclear bombs, nuclear weapons are very expensive. The maintenance of them is very expensive. They age poorly. They have to, the turnover and the staffing and all that kind of stuff it takes a lot of work and a lot of materials. Getting one to fly through, out of the atmosphere and back into the atmosphere is a feat in and of itself. Ask SpaceX what it's like to try and get a rocket to do what it's supposed to do after it's left the atmosphere. So it's no small feat. But the idea is that, to a certain extent, Kim Jong-un or anyone like him in the world there's a certain form of logic to, if I have these, I'm safe. If I don't have them, they're going to eventually knock me off. And that seems to be the logic that's in play here. And Trump is playing straight into that logic. There is no, the ratcheting down doesn't exist in that part of it. I appreciate the call. Let me grab one more caller before we take the break. Who do we have, Johnny?
How about Skip on line 4?
Excellent.
Hey, Al.
Hey, Skip.
Hey, Al, big fan.
Thank you. Welcome.
Regarding Manafort, what you said right after the news, you repeated it. I think that he's so dirty, and that's why the FBI went in there. They got word that he's got stuff in his house.
Yep.
I think he's going to flip. They're going to turn him around, offer him either immunity or no jail time, and he's going to turn on Trump. I think Trump will be done. I think he's got a lot of stuff on Trump. Deals they may have been involved in together, or he may have led him to deals, or Trump may have led him to deals.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only thing I can figure why the FBI would go in there in the middle of the night after he sent to the Senate Investigating Committee, boy, I'm giving you everything I have. And apparently they knew he had more.
Absolutely. They also knew that, by the way, he might have agreed to give them certain kinds of documentation, but that doesn't mean he's giving them the ancillary electronic devices that stuff is on, which has a lot of other talk about that may speak to whether the documents he gave are legit or not. So a lot of times what they're going to want to see when you give them, your tax returns or your receipts and all that, if you have a bunch of emails that say, by the way, I printed up a bunch of receipts and I got this receipt printer and we just made up a bunch of dinners so I could write off all these dinners. Or all right, I got a packet of taxi receipts from that guy, and so we'll just fill them out ourselves. If you have language about that and they find out they believe that they have evidence that you were cheating on one angle of it, and that's ancillary proof on another angle that you did that, that's when they're gonna go. They want that stuff. And think about this before we go to break, and we're going to take more calls after the break, but think about this. If that kind of stuff came off of his daughter's phone, if his daughter was saying that to his other daughter about blood money, about Ukraine, about how we keep going to these places and eating the lobster, what are her texts to her father like? And what phones, computers, hard drives, and files did they get on a digital level? Devices, iPads, Amazon Fires, whatever, does he have in his house that they picked up as part of that raid? Because if they want documents, it's not just going to be paper. Did they find that's going to basically confirm what his daughters were saying back and forth to each other? That's the scary part for Paul Manafort right now, is them combing digitally through that and confirming what's on the dark web. Because there's reasons not to trust that stuff. There's reasons to think that if somebody hacked your emails and gives them to WikiLeaks and they end up on the web, that doesn't mean they're really your emails. They could be your emails with an extra paragraph added to every 15th one about dead bodies buried someplace to incriminate you. And therefore, they are untrustworthy. But if they get your documents from your server and your devices and they confirm them against them, then all of a sudden we've got the president having a press conference the next week after he hasn't. That's the interesting part. We'll be back. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Media if they fell for those. I'm just catching up on the chat, guys. And thank you so much, Natalie. Really appreciate it. This is a fascinating thing because I love this kind of famously the line in The Untouchables was that. It's not sexy, but it's got teeth, right? That was the line about tax evasion and Al Capone. And in terms of he was right. It was what he actually went to jail for. That was how they got him. It's not sexy, but it's got teeth. And I that became a fascinating turning point in the Untouchables. Here they are busting open barrels of liquor and rousting people. So we're a waste of time. You're never going to get the guy that way.
Robotic again.
Okay, I'll cut out and come back. That seems to help. All right. Reloading. Hey, I'm back. So the question becomes, if you're looking at something like The Firm is a great example of how this stuff goes gnarly quickly. That from gentlemen lawyers who just represent community interests, we have many businesses around here, and some things aren't always above board, but we give proper financial instruction to very important parties going forward. You understand, my young man? So I don't want you to be concerned, nothing to worry about here or whatever. Cut to in the third reel, you're running through the streets with a briefcase jumping out a window to land in a cotton bale so that you don't get buried in the yard with the last lawyer who had your job. We couldn't be happier that you're joining us down here in Memphis. Wonderful business thing. It's weird that you guys are. I got you
10
on,
seconds.
and how did he get the firm? Billing. He got him on billing.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
We were having a discussion during the break and with the chat room about how, a lot of this legal stuff is really dry in the beginning. And movies about it tend to be, kind of dry and charming almost, beating the Firm famously, and the inversion being the Untouchables. Very exciting in the beginning. And then when they actually get the case against Capone, it's, it's not sexy, but it's got teeth was the line, right? And that was how they got him. That's how they got Capone. That's, it's how he ended up dying in jail, basically, tax evasion. And in the Firm, everything starts out fine. We're so glad you could come down here to Memphis and join us and help us out. We're very tied into the community. Your wife will enjoy several outings with all the other Stepfords family. And never mind, don't go into that room. That's just filing. And it just contains the body of your predecessor. And then, it all starts off nice wine and cheese parties and kind of normal, organizational corporate law. Next thing you know, you're jumping out a window into a hay bale to escape being buried in a yard someplace. And then you end up busting them for what? How did the Firm, do you remember how the Firm went down? How he actually ended up getting the Justice Department to shut them down? Do you remember, Johnny?
I remember in the book there was a whole bunch of Xerox copies.
That's right.
Files.
Oh, man, dated as hell. Billing. He got them. They were double billing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they were. That's mail fraud. When they send you a bill for work they didn't do or work that they were doing for someone else, but they billed you for. And it was like 25 years for each count. And it's like, and he had 60,000 letters. Like everybody's going down, but ultimately, he couldn't get them on the stuff that they were doing because they were so good at hiding what they were doing. And so he ultimately what he got them on was lying through the mail. That was what it was, right?
Wow.
And so if you look at the Manafort situation, what they're ultimately going to get Trump on is the ignorance of his own, how knee-deep he is in a lot of this stuff to some degree. And so he'll talk flippantly about stuff and get himself caught. But also, the stuff that he is aware of, he thinks that's the only crime in it. You know what I mean? Like, he thinks that, yeah, they gave me money that might have been from a questionable source, and we bought a piece of property, and then we sold it back to them, and we kept the profits, and it ended up being kind of a 20%. It's just a bad real estate. The money where it came from was a little sketchy, but I didn't do anything to get that money, and we ended up selling the property anyways, and the loan was paid off, and that's that. Not understanding that that's admission of money laundering. That's actually what it is. And that Florida property is probably the greatest example of a single act of money laundering that has ever occurred. And if here's what they have to find out is he buys that property, sells it to this Russian oligarch for twice as much. Then he goes and does another deal with this same guy where that guy keeps the property and Trump just takes basically 10 of the $90 million. He gets to keep that. And that's what money laundering is. That's why when people and a bank robber, like in movies about bank robbers, they always talk about going to a fence with bank cash, and they need to get rid of the cash because it's either marked bills or it just happened or whatever. So a fence or a guy who will launder the money for you will give you 60 cents on the dollar. And there's always been plots about bank robbers who are like really pinched and they have to leave the country, so they're only going to get 40 or 20 cents on the dollar, right? That's what they're talking about. That's money laundering. There's a guy you go to with your money that you stole from the bank. You give it to him. He puts it into something legit, like like the Breaking Bad car wash, or a quick stock sale. That's the big gnarly part of it that nobody talks about. One of these 1-minute stock sales, where it goes into account, it buys a bunch of stocks as an LLC, it sells those stocks later that afternoon for a minor profit. That guy keeps that profit because he, or keeps the cost of the loss as a broker, and then the money goes back to you. And as it passes hands, everybody takes their cut because everybody gets in trouble. So everybody gets a trouble fee. It's like a trouble tax. And by the time it gets back to you, the $100,000 you stole is $40,000, and then you plan the next one. And it's dangerous when you go gun in hand and do this, but that's the exaggerated version of it. The white-collar version of this happens all the time. And Manafort and a lot of these guys are good at it. They've been doing it forever. It is literally their modus operandi. The reason he's the guy handling this paperwork for this Russian oligarch who ran Ukraine for a short time and then effed off to Russia to hide with Snowden and everybody else who's been caught in this. Like, for God's sakes, at this point, on many fronts, Putin holds all the cards on a lot of these equations. If WikiLeaks is not innocent and they dropped Snowden off, that's horrible. If they are innocent and they have to kind of play ball and not go after Putin too hard because he'll snuff Snowden if they don't, that's horrible too. And I mean, that's the concerning part. And then when you've got Manafort worked for Trump for whatever, 3 months, 5 months or whatever, doing this thing. Okay. What was his job? He was good at counting votes. That was the big thing. That was what was his purpose? Why are you bringing him on to the campaign? He's good at counting votes. Votes don't get counted in Ukraine when a Russian oligarch is running the place and sucking all the funds out of the country. Okay? That money isn't being siphoned easily. And the votes that are cast by the Ukrainian people are not being counted. They are being burned in barrels. That's why Manafort is good at his job. That's why you bring in Manafort for a contested convention and for ultimately an election cycle where you think you might be on the losing end. This guy is good at election manipulation. And maybe you don't think you can do it with the national election, but you damn sure think that somebody like Paul Manafort knows how to go to an actual person-to-person convention and make sure that all the tabulated convention ballots strangely go your way. That, again, thinking like you're awful for a moment. What would you do in that situation? You're awful. You're hired to be awful. How does that work out? It works out exactly as Paul Manafort was brought in to make it work out. And that's why he walked away with a $24 million loan that he arguably probably never has to pay back after he loses his job. Because why? Why did he lose his job? Because he was paid by a Russian oligarch who was siphoning money out of Ukraine and kneecapping that country. And then ultimately oversaw the gunning down of hundreds of protesters. That's heavy stuff, right? And that's all coming off a pre-dawn raid by the FBI into one of his 3 homes, the one they thought had the highest chance of him keeping that stuff. But let's say you're like, oh, well, why would they think he kept quote unquote documents in that place? The honest answer is there's no reason to believe it, that he carries boxes of documents to any of his homes. What's believable is that that's where his laptop and his phones were and all of the equipment he carries with him. It didn't matter which house he was in. He could have slept in any of those houses. But they got a no-knock warrant for wherever he was that night. If he's at one of his residences, odds on we have intel that says that stuff is there. So that in and of itself is fascinating to me. And it's the kind of thing you start covering with ratcheting up, the threat of nuclear war with North Korea. That's the kind. You need a big dog with a big tail to wag that one for you. So I think going forward, obviously we're all kind of waiting with bated breath what the Monday thing will be. If it's any indication, all of the North Korea questions will just be a continued fire and fury and foam, anything, just fate, fascism. We're going to drop bombs used food. I'm going to destroy. It'll be worse than any worse thing that I've ever said could be worse than what I said last time, okay? Whatever you're thinking, it's worse than that. It's... This is based after Fire and Fury. It's kind of all downhill from there. I mean, he should have just, from a branding standpoint,
the world has never seen,
like the Fire and Fury, like the world has never seen before, like the world's never actually. After World War II, ask the Russians about 25 million dead from practical weaponry, from conventional weaponry. The world has seen this before in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The world has seen this in Aleppo recently. Again, people only get so dead. And then we're just talking about volume at that point. And if that's what you're bragging about, the only thing that the world has never seen before is essentially a city of 6 million people being nuked. With a bomb with a radius as big as they are today. Like the bombs that we create today are, have a mile, like a 20-mile extra radius around them as far as blast zone. And then we talk about impact and blast wave beyond that. The only thing you can talk about is volume. The number of people killed and the number of bombs dropped. That's the only difference between the horror of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, which should be enough for anyone. People are still dealing with the cancer and birth defects who had nothing to do with the time that those bombs went off. And why you would want that in any way.
You ever hear the story about the guy that was hit by both bombs?
No. Was he in the...
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
It was on... It was in This American Life, and he was trying to get from one of the cities to the other, and obviously the bombs didn't land on him, but he was affected by both bombs, as he had no idea that when he was running to get to the other city to get to his girlfriend or his fiance or something like that, he was just running right back into another bomb.
Right. Well, how would you know? And again...
How would you know? Yeah, so if you Google that, you can find it. The Japanese man who was hit by both bombs.
That in and of itself, the world doesn't ever need that again, not in any stretch. And conventional weaponry that the United States has is capable of dealing with the threat of North Korea without ever launching a nuke. It just is. We have a military 6 times the size of the rest of the world combined, not including our nuclear arsenal. We don't have to nuke North Korea to devastate it, to kill everyone in it. That's the weird part. but Trump is dancing on this idea. I blew past the break. We got to take a break. We'll come back. More of your calls, 773-763-9278. It's the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. Rick Perry That's just one of those. Well, he's a Texas governor, so he understands when the Mexicans are coming. He knows how to deal with them, even though while he was governor, we said it was the worst it's ever been, which it wasn't, but Obama was president. So it's best when Obama's president to just say things are the worst they've ever been in general, even if it craps on our own governors and our own people, because it's not actually Obama's responsibility or capability. It's best to just say, even though Rick Perry was in charge of directing Homeland Security and border patrols and law enforcement to deal with the problem, it was Obama's fault that he didn't. More people were killed in the napalming of Tokyo than in Hiroshima. That's right. That's right, Carl. If you don't count the secondary cancer deaths and murders that happened because of that. I mean, that's the other. Because you're killing people for a long time when you nuke something, and that's why everybody's been against it for a long time. Even though Pakistan has it, and to protect themselves from India, neither one of them, their worry is that some nutcase who doesn't understand that or doesn't care. The only people we really have to fear, are are religious fanatics with them. Somebody believes that the end times are coming. Those people are dangerous with them because they don't care if they go too. And that's the Martin Sheen character in Dead Zone. The missiles are away, hallelujah. That's super concerning. I've said to all my friends, syphilis is why Trump won't release his medical records or take a new physical too many nights at Club 51. It's reasonable. It's a reasonable thought to have. It's not uncommon in that particular circle, that swinger crowd that was late to the game and thought AIDS was a gay disease, so they didn't use protection all during a period, almost as a way of saying, as a revolt against the idea. So. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that's entirely possible. I have not seen Ozark. I keep looking at it when I'm, but I just don't have time. When the Chinese Communist Party is making more sense than the Republican Party, then we're in trouble. I got news for you. Having traveled to China quite a bit, the Communist Party in China is the Republican Party, but they're the Republican Party from like 1990. It is this illusion that the Communist Party is to communism what the Republican Party is to family values. It's their sales point, but they don't participate in it at all. There's no communism in China for all practical sense. Like the state's ability to enact a massive amount of eminent domain.
30 seconds, I'm sorry.
Their acts of eminent domain are the greatest acts of communism that happen in the country, and nobody cares because there's so much land and so many people. They'd rather have a building built, so they don't care. But that economy is more capitalist than ours is. They just skim off the top and call it communism, but it's not. It's an absurdity.
Now back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide, 773-763-9278.
I love that new Metallica album, by the way. I listen to it, frequently enough that it is a current classic. I do. I listen to it with the same kind of listening that I would Ride the Lightning, like with that much frequency because it's that's saying a lot.
Actually, I've listened to Ride the Lightning on a regular basis.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's the Metallica album, as beautiful as Master of Puppets is. That's when they found their sound. That being said, you and I can get lost down that hole. We need to re-up our podcast again, you and I. We need to get back to Hotter Than Hell.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, because there's a lot to talk about musically.
Hotter Than Hell, and just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. Driftglass in our chat room. The rabbit Hal. That Driftglass in our chat room says, thought experiment. Every time you hear Trump, mentally substitute 62 million Republicans and a complicit media. I think there's a lot of argument for that specifically. Let's take another caller, though, before we start running out of time.
Let's go with, we've got Jerry on line 5.
Excellent. Hey, Jerry, welcome.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Very astute comments. I just wanted to offer in a quick potential explanation for Trump's bizarre comment on military action in Venezuela.
Yeah,
right.
As you know, Venezuela is falling apart. Its leader has charged to its citizens that the United States is going to invade. But Venezuela also owes Russia $50 billion.
Right.
And most people don't know this. On the 23rd of December in 2016, Russia put a security interest on Citgo. If it doesn't get paid, it will own Citgo.
Right.
You know, the large oil company with a refinery here in Lake Charles. So I think that was a little nod to Putin, you could argue, to keep the current government in power, because otherwise Putin doesn't get paid.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I mean, the oil nationalization act in Venezuela, and the kind of again, we were talking about this during the break. The idea that Chinese is as communist as the Republican Party is family values. It is a name-only circumstance. And
exactly.
And the Venezuelan socialism, as it were, was very much in line with the same problem. Think of it as a South American Ukraine during the time that Manafort was helping Yanukovych run the place. This is the same thing. They're using this weird caring about the people here. We are running this country, to protect you and stuff. We're going to nationalize these resources. And then they start selling the resources off under the nose of the people at a premium while getting a kickback from who they're doing it to. And that's Russia. But then everything starts to break down. Payments aren't being made.
Exactly right.
Right.
Yep.
And Putin is counting on this money because the Magnitsky Act has frozen a bunch of his accounts and who he can interact with. So Venezuela is yet another vein that his money was flowing through. That $50 billion that, quote unquote, they owe Russia is pocket change for, that it's part of that $200 billion that Putin is worth worldwide. That's what that's about. And
exactly.
So you're absolutely right.
He gets a percentage, supposedly, from every
no question.
From every sale of oil. So it was very interesting to me that Trump made that comment, because it goes to support and really shore up Putin's position as a creditor to Venezuela. That's what I was thinking when he made that comment.
Yeah, it protects his investment, essentially, because if it falls apart, or the people who come in, if the citizens rise up and take this place over and go and uncover basically the shenanigans that have been going on, if they basically effectively put a stop to it, that cuts off another vein of support that Putin counts on for all of the other stuff that he's doing. He's a mobster who one of his street corners is drying up. And he's got a choice. He can kill the cop that patrols it. He can turn the cop that patrols it, or he can get the mayor of the next town over to basically muscle the guy out who's covering that. You're absolutely right. And that will be, watch for that ratchet to start rising up. And then we're going to hear that the American military is going to be going in as peacekeepers to protect the Venezuelan people from, the military there. And there'll be enough truth in it, because it is a violent regime and a violent circumstance that's going on there, to cover for the fact that it's really a giant lie. You get these like little truths to cover these giant lies, and that is essentially how you operate white collar crime. This is, thanks for calling in. I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's not the only country that's going on in. I mean, if you talk about countries that are known, North African countries or Yemen, where we talk about, ISIS and Al-Qaeda having strongholds and piracy happening there, whatever. Well, where does that stuff go once it's stolen? How does it get back on the market, and to whom? and again, it goes to those like, in New Jersey, a truck gets hijacked and suddenly TVs are being sold out of vans all over the Northeast. It's got to go somewhere, and it's got to real money has to hit this stuff at some point, and that real money is tracked by someone. And once, by the way, all the pallet money that that got dropped off in Iraq disappears, which, by the way, goes very quickly. That as much as that $9 billion that went missing in Iraq that everybody talks about, that money went everywhere. That Tom Cruise movie that's coming out about the CIA and cocaine and all that's coming out, and the stories of Rick Ross and crack cocaine in in Los Angeles, all that stuff. That's the template. That's the template for how it works. It doesn't mean it's ongoing. And again, I don't necessarily think that everybody who runs an organization is the same that runs every organization. The Russian Gorbachev was not dirty the way Putin is dirty. There is a difference, and there can be a change. And Venezuela is not doomed to being effectively an oligarchy or a kleptocracy or a kakistocracy, forever. There can be a turn in these, and it does matter what part the United States plays sometimes in these circumstances. And in certain cases, intervention is important. Clinton famously saying that the biggest regret he had of his presidency was not going into Rwanda. Not doing something about Rwanda, watching that effectively happen and not acting. And largely it was because, why? He was tied in knots in the country that this would be considered a wag the dog, but helping a country of predominantly white people wouldn't be. The Republicans would be on board for that. They wouldn't be on board for Rwanda. And so this is a constant. Yeah.
Talk to. We've got a couple more calls. One being Ivan, but I'm going to save him.
Yeah, let's take a break because we're right at the quarter hour, and that'll give us a little more time. And we'll take them right after we come back from the break. That's awesome.
We got two more.
Cool. That's awesome. And we have a kind of an awesome happy ending this week too. Like we got a couple of good ones. Woo! Not to mention that, of course, the end times are coming and the apocalypse in the form of an eclipse next week. So enjoy that. Just in case anybody who lives in M. Night Shyamalan's The Village, they're going to have a rough week. We'll be back right after this.
People believe that, but not global warming.
That's right. Yeah. My dog's acting crazy because of that eclipse. But why would smokestacks destroy the atmosphere? I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. We'll be back right after this. I don't know why anybody cares about Newt Gingrich's yo-yo opinions about Trump. Like, I don't get what has this dude been right about ever in any massive way? And especially the whole, like, going after Clinton while having an affair. Like, he was he lost his speakership because while he was going after Clinton for an affair, he was having an affair himself. On his
houses, man.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
But here's the thing. I understand having an affair. I also understand not having an affair and being in judgment of people who do. Having an affair and being in judgment of people who do is an awkward line to walk. And it's even more awkward when you are publicly shaming them and calling for legal investigations into their affair. Like, that goes to a level of, like, psychotic hubris on that's the kind of thing where David Lee Roth would go, man, you're out of line. That is off the chain. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't get it. I don't get it, man. Kim Jong is trolling Trump. Rodman gave him the idea. God, I hope you're right, Amos. That'd be genius. There is no threat.
30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 But Bill Clinton lied about it. That's right. Yeah. He lied about having an affair. Who would do that? Who would lie about having sex with someone other than their wife when asked? I mean, yeah.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide. It's now time for the happy ending.
Welcome back. Let's go straight to our callers because I want to make sure they have enough time to talk about this. And
right on. Yeah, and so to bring on this next call, it's going to be Donald on line 1. I want to read a tweet from Kumail Nanjiani who said, genuine question.
Yeah.
How do we react to this rally in a way that makes them feel it's a failure? It seems they feed on condemnation and anger.
You can't condemn them in anger. You have to.
Hey there, Donald.
Yeah. Hi, Donald. You have to hold up signs that make fun of them. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, continue. Go ahead, Donald. Welcome. Are you there? Can you hear us?
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Hal. You know, I'm watching this thing on TV, and I think it's so ridiculous with the statue thing. Now, I'm a Democrat, and I don't think they should even bother with the statue. But, you know, what they should do, find out what politician did this that agreed to move this statue. Was it a Republican? Do you know offhand?
Yeah. Yes, I believe so. I mean, it depends on which one we're talking about. But there's been, Republicans and Democrats have played a part in moving all these. These are obviously majority acts by most places. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, the thing is this: what really bothers me with all the tensions that we got in this country today, they must have known that this was going to happen. These politicians, they use this. I don't know why they go ahead and pull this stuff. They don't even have a National Guard out there, and these stupid idiots on both sides of the fence. Is it worth risking your life? Maybe perhaps getting killed or injured in something like this just over the move of a statue. This is just equivalent to almost as going to war for the stupid words that come out that can put us at the brink of war.
Well, I agree, but I think some people view this with the same level of fervor that people, do religiously. And famously, it's like the 10 Commandments. Okay, people are always wanting to put 10 Commandments in front of state houses all over the country, right? And there's been violence around those. A guy drove into one of them and crushed it, and a bunch of people got into a fight protecting, literally giving death threats to someone who had one removed. To protect a monument that says thou shalt not kill, they were sending death threats. Like, understand, there's not a whole lot of logic built into this. Never mind the fact that in a 10 Commandments statute, we only actually litigate 2 of them. The rest of them are unconstitutional. Killing and thievery, we have variant degrees. Not all crimes are the same. You can kill somebody if it's an accident, but you can't murder them. And even if you murder them, there's like 5 versions of murder. We'll talk you through it. But and same thing with thievery. We slipshod prosecute theft, but people will threaten people's lives over a monument of the 10 Commandments, not the actual documents themselves. Somebody didn't find these things. This isn't like the Constitution protected in a hermetically sealed case. And in the case of these statues, I do think there should be more care in the moving of them. And you can set up a museum if you want and move them to a museum, but we're moving them out of town squares because we don't think it's appropriate, and it's and they lost. It's the losing team. I'm sorry. Ultimately, you don't get to have winter war monuments after you tried an act of sedition against the country and you lose. Like, it's been up too long, and a lot of them got put up, it's not like they got put up right after the Civil War. Some of those have just been up in the last 50 years, So it's really curious that this has become an act against the civil rights movement and that kind of stuff. So they can go, but you do it in such a way that, like, we're moving this to the Louisiana State Museum so people can go see them, and we'll have a display about where they came from and the person and all this stuff, and it won't just be a town square where pigeons can crap on them. And if you think they need to still be there, you can go down and make your case. We're an ideologically pluralistic country. You can have stupid ideas. You can have violent and even racist ideas as long as you don't carry them out. And in this particular sense, again, I think these will dust up. They'll go away. None of these guys, this is the amazing thing to me, and then we'll grab our other caller. I appreciate you calling Donald because it is an important point, is that most of the guys who are doing these marches are mad because of things like affirmative action or women getting, SBA loans or those kind of things. Most of these guys aren't going through the process of filing for SBA loans or trying to get any of these things, or get into Yale, and that they feel like white people are being denied because minorities and Asian, foreign students are getting these things when white people. These aren't the people who are going for those things. So they're just basically in a circular firing squad on the internet, angry about this stuff, and it just ratchets up. And they even had this, that thing where they sent out a little flyer like, "Don't show up if you're fat because it makes white supremacy look bad." Again, if you ignore these people or mock them softly, and I don't mean go down like, call them names in a way that you're trying to provoke a fight, but literally go down there with signs that say yawn on them and the like. That will do more to impact their, what their sway and what the strength they will gather from this than if you go down there and really accuse them of being, holding up signs that say they're racist, because these guys get off on that stuff. They enjoy it. If you look at any of the
Hey, let's bring let's not forget about Ivan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey Ivan, welcome. Sorry, you're right. I will get off onto a tear and that will be that. Hey Ivan, welcome.
Yeah, you will. He'll be off on a tear, then there's no happy ending, no nothing.
Let me be quick here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look, Trump said it himself during the debate. When Hillary criticized him for not paying taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Trump said, "What I've been doing is completely legal as a businessman, and you and the lawmakers have had over 30 years to do something about it, and you didn't." He really believes, and so does his teabagger base, that if a businessman gets away with money laundering, tax evasion, fraudulent practices, it's no big deal.
Right.
And the right-wing media is now spinning it that way. It's no big deal to commit crimes. It's just smart business.
Yeah. Oh, collusion isn't a crime. Yeah, absolutely right, Ivan. Remember how fast they went from there was no collusion, there's no collusion, to, well, if there was collusion, it's not even a crime, except when the Democrats do it. The Democrats were colluding because the State Department and 15 other agencies signed off on sending uranium to Russia, of all places, which you should be able to do anyways. This knot they tie themselves in is absurd. But you're absolutely right. And believe me, none of the people who are marching today, or none of the people who are wearing those red hats, could afford to stay in a Trump anything. And he would have them escorted out if they bugged him too much. So, the celebrity status aspect of this is the most kind of shocking and ridiculous part of this, because I would almost understand if they elected a country star. If there was some like country singer who had some political leanings and he was kind of, the same kind of jerk, but, he believed, he at least created the illusion of down home. This is a rich New York silver spoon, got, bone spurs got him out of the Vietnam War. He wouldn't have anything to do with most Trump supporters, and yet this cult of personality that they've fallen for is extraordinary. And, it speaks volumes to what they're willing to experience just to get the foreigners out, or just to get quote unquote jobs back to their area. The panic about it is so strong.
And should we reach an olive branch out to all the white fat nationalists who weren't allowed to march today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell them to come over to our side.
Yeah, right. We're very. Believe me, the left will protect you if you've been fat shamed. Honest to God. Have you been fat shamed by the white supremacy movement because they don't think you're an example of the pure genetic means?
The left cares about you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we do have time for the happy ending, I think, right?
Thank you, Ivan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ivan.
Just barely.
And here's the thing, honest to God, I do think that the way you handle these people is dismissive mockery, not violent mockery. You have to pick it because if they feel like they're getting your ire up, they win. The Ben Shapiros of the world love it when they don't have to give a speech because there was a riot on the campus. The way to really handle them is to do an alternate event on the other side of campus that's a lot of fun and a party and full of actual supportive, strong, quality language and growth, and let everybody, whine about why they're not getting their way anymore. Go to the tiny little auditorium across the quad. But if you go out there and throw stuff, they're like, see, they know our truth is so strong that they have to use violence because they know we're right. That's what they think. I'm dead serious. Look at any of their social media. Look at any of their YouTube videos.
Oh, yeah.
This is the argument. So you have to check yourself and not get upset. You can't show them that give. It's like fear to a dog. You just can't. If you feel it, that's fine. Feel it somewhere else. Find another way. Check yourself when you're tweeting. Go, okay, how can I be dismissive of these people as opposed to, get ired up? And it's hard to do. I'm not successful all the time on Twitter. Okay, we got 1 minute left. I want to do the happy ending. We don't have time for the song, but I do want to do it. Okay, this is it. Pig organs. I don't know if you heard about this, but there's a new article out.
They sound amazing.
Yeah. Gene editing spurs hope for transplanting pig organs into humans. So one of the problems they've had with, because we're genetically very close to pigs, and you can grow, like somebody loses their ear, you can grow one on a pig's back, and apparently it will do this or whatever. Well, they can use pig cells, not even have to kill the pig, by the way. The pig doesn't have to be harmed in this situation. They can use pig cells to grow human organs with no retroviruses now. That was the big fear for a long time, that it creates a retrovirus. Anybody who's seen Blade Runner.
Does your ear smell like bacon?
Yes, and that's the lovely thing, is that my heart smells like bacon. It's just sweetness. But that's true. That's a huge step forward. They think by 2020 that's possible. They were saying something like this wouldn't be happening until 2060. Wow. That's transplant possibilities for millions of people who need kidneys and hearts and lungs.
And proof of alien intelligence.
I'm
just putting that out there.
All right. That'll be on Hotter Than Hal on our next episode. We'll talk about rock songs, progressive music. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you, Lady B.
Later.
Suey.
If it's feeding your soul, and don't tell somebody.
Thank you so much, Lady B. Thank you, Johnny. Love you guys. See you next time. Signing off, clicking off before the blues music starts. the music for Dick K, who's great, who follows me on the show. It just wah, 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 wah. And I always forget it's coming because it goes quiet for a little while, and then I'm talking to the chat room, and then wah, wah, wonk. So thank you, chat room, for riding out the sound and video issues with us. It was great. It ended up working after a while. It got rolled up. And thank you so much for the super chat today. We'll use. I think I'll sign up for the Mimo live thing, and we'll be able to use that when I'm on the road, because I have a few road gigs coming up, leading up to the Concert for America and leading up to Bellevue, Washington. I'm in outside of Seattle in a couple weeks. Oh, thanks, James. That's awesome. So that will I'll need that for the road, and that's what this will go to. I really appreciate everybody's help today and listening. We will see you next time. Bye bye. Squee.